Welcome to Native Calgarian and Mossy for listening. I'm your host, Michelle Robinson, speaking to you in Mohkinstsis in the Blackfoot Confederacy, home of the Niitsitapi, Tsuut'ina Dene, and the Yiharhi Nakota. I talk about history, current news, unheard news, book clubs, with special guests to give local or national issues a voice through an urban Satu Dene lens. My life's work will be to honor the voices of my ancestors and next generation with humor, love, and truth. Reconciliation is work, not performance. May we honor all Indigenous voices with that courage.
Oki Naganago Mekoche Chesta Komaki, Dakots Nagochine Siku. I want to acknowledge that I'm on Blackfoot territory of the Confederacy. This is also Treaty 7 in 1877. The Blackfoot Confederacy, the Tsuut'ina Nation, the Stoney Nations, and the colonizers had penned Treaty 7, and I acknowledge all First Nation, Métis, Inuit, status and non-status across Turtle Island as the keepers of these lands. And with that, welcome to Chapters in Chat, Restoring Indigenous Leadership, Wise Practices in Community Development, edited by Cora Voyager, Laura Rarely, and Brian Callahoo. So, yeah, glad to have people join us today. And I would love, Rosemary, for you to tell everybody what's happening this Sunday and the other event that we were talking about as well with Cora. Dr. Voyager.
Right, okay. First, I'll talk about the event with Cora. So on Thursday, March 5th, at the Alex Food Community Center, Cora Voyager, Dr. Cora Voyager is going to be addressing the issue of colonization and poverty, fact and fiction, Indigenous communities in Canada. And the doors open at 5. There'll be a soup and bannock supper served, and then Cora will take it away. And it's very much a follow-up to some past sessions, right, on land dispossession and the need for land back and resource exploitation, and et cetera. That's how that builds. And I think, again, the issues that she'll talk about are issues we all need to hear over and over and over again, especially if we're not Indigenous, just in terms of awareness and hopefully motivation to act and do something, right? As we've said over and over around the calls to action, the calls to justice, etc. And this Sunday, February 15th, from 3 to 5, at the Unitarian Church, we're holding an event called Palestine, Culture is Resistance. And the event involves music, people playing the oud, Arabic percussion. We've got spoken word poetry by 2 adults and also 2 children who have performed at rallies. There'll be food, there'll be short films with children singing, and then people performing the dabka, which is a traditional Palestinian dance. And then they'll invite the audience to participate, and they'll lead them in the dance. And as I was saying earlier, I think just, given what we've all talked about, what's happening in the world, the impact on Indigenous peoples, whether they're in Canada or with what's happening with the Palestinian. And again, the news out of Palestine today has been horrible in terms of Israel just saying, yeah, we're just going to annex the West Bank. And then I heard from someone that they're just going to start executing prisoners. But that it's so important during these times for community to come together and to recognize that culture is resistance, whether it's, the things that Cora talks about in the introduction, well, not just Cora, but Brian Callahoo to the book about that, for example, leadership models have to be grounded, right, in traditional values and ways of knowing and being. And I think that's true for any people. It's about identity and one's place in the world. And I better be quiet now. Yeah.
Well, for the record, I encouraged you to be loud and obnoxious because I like to surround myself with loud and obnoxious women who are actually speaking truth to power, which you were. So, yeah, I just adore you, Rosemary, and I'm grateful to have had you in my life this many years and, watch all the events that you do and handle anti-racism conversations. I have to surround myself with people who understand that. So I'm grateful for everything you say. So, yeah.
And, and and I know others here are very grateful for you and what you do and how you speak out and the leadership you take on issues.
Well, I appreciate that. Um, all right. Well, how about we'll let Kat and Wendy say hello and then we'll get going on the book.
Hello. I loved this book, by the way.
Oh, good.
Almost well, I learned something from every essay. One or two were a little dry, but made it through. But I loved them all. And I hope that, I was thinking one of the essays said that a certain book was sent out to every nation in the United States. I can't remember which essay said that, but this book should go to every nation in Canada, and so people can feel supported in their leadership journeys. Anyway, I loved it, and we can talk more about it later.
Fabulous. Hi, Wendy. Thanks for coming today.
Hello. Good to see everyone. I'm Wendy Benoit. I am a settler here on Treaty 7 and almost all of the way through the book. I will say really insightful on just thinking about leadership from many different angles, but I definitely um, I have limits to being excited about economic ideas. And so
Same. Yeah.
I found I had to kind of pace myself. But when I'd stop and, take a few notes, I just found in different sections I took away different things, but really loved really loved what Rosemary said at the beginning about the grounding in culture. That was really resonant throughout the whole book. So what a great way to start our conversation today. But really appreciated too that it's an edited book. So you kind of go from different authors and totally different contexts and everything like that. So that kept it interesting enough. I think some of those chapters would have been hard as an entirety, but bringing them together was really great. So looking forward to the discussion tonight. And yeah, the world continues to be a really hard place. And so really grateful for conversations like this one that keep us moving forward. Thanks.
Yeah, me too. I'm grateful for these conversations with like-minded people. Because then that way when we kind of dive into a book like this, we all kind of piece and thread a few different things. And that's what I love about book club and doing it with folks like yourselves. So thank you always for coming and joining us. So I'm just going to give some background to anybody who's listening. Dr. Cora Voyager, she was one of the first in Dene academics that I was ever introduced to, and her being right in the U of C, like I was so hopeful for the U of C. Some of the non-Indigenous profs have been very like violent towards me. So, I've actually really kind of pushed away from there. And apparently those same academics are busy telling all of the Native kids to not follow me and not listen to me. So, I really struggle with the U of C and promoting it in any way. But with Cora, she is just this like firecracker for anybody who has met her. Brilliant, intelligent woman who just, we had some, you know, conversations, just her and I, and then I just appreciate that she doesn't tokenize our culture. And when I started reading her words in here, it just resonated more. So for me, I have a deep love and respect for Cora. Some of her poor colleagues, I've always thought, I pray for her actually that she has to work with those terrible people. So I hope that she's a trailblazer as well. Um, how do I say this? This book is that I actually think because this book was done in 2015, um, actually come quite far in 10 years. So I'm not saying that any of this is something people can, just slough off. The opposite. I think it's important that people understand, like, these conversations were quite revolutionary in 2015. That was when the TRC report was given to us, but this was published already. This was published, and trying to lead the way in these conversations about truth and reconciliation without us even having the language of truth and reconciliation. So I really appreciated this book, just for that reason alone. And it was on my we should read this to-do list for too long, and I had come across it at Fairs Fair. And I was like, that's it. It's got to go into our next year's list. And I think I meant to do it last year and I didn't. But anyway, it's a book that I've been really excited to get into. So this one that I have is the second edition. I didn't really look further into edition to second edition, but this I really thought was a wonderful book. It starts off with a dedication to the Treaty 7, to the Blackfoot Confederacy, Tom Crane Bear, Elder Tom Crane Bear. It's dedicated to him. So that really just, I think, sets the right tone because, I'm from further north than she is. She's Athabascan Dene, and I'm Sahtu Dene, so I'm a little further north. And I think it's so important as Native people that we always center the land that we're on. And she's at the U of C. I'm, Native Calgarian because I was born here as well. That bigger picture that, I think if Natives aren't giving the respect to the very people of land that we're on first, that's why this sets the tone in such a good way. And so I was excited to get reading and, reading the acknowledgments and some of the folks that are in here. And I know some have even passed away. So, I, to folks that are listening, there are basically a few chapters of different people from different parts of the world. So, Cora starts talking about Indigenous leadership, Brian Callahoo, like Canadian Indigenous folks talking about wise practices. And then we get into the States, Australia, and there's a few different topics in Australia that kind of come back in the US. So I really did enjoy that, it was really honest about all of that. I was surprised to read Brett Wilson somewhat like he's still very whitewashed, but I was surprised that he was even able to write this forward, frankly. I figured he must have gave the money for it. That's it. And I don't mean disrespect to Cora. I just know books like this are always, they need help to get published. So I don't know if that was his involvement, but the U of C has that Brett Wilson feeling. Anyway, so yeah, I didn't get through all of this. And the reason was I also got kind of bored and there was bad money on the Super Bowl. And I was reading all these Puerto Rican takes about all of the things that were included in his little time that he was on there. And that is a conversation about decolonization. That's a conversation about the harms of colonization. That's, Indigenous people fighting for independence. He gave a huge shout out to Hawaii, you know, and how they were colonized too. So, and then for him to talk about all the Indigenous people, like it was just it's fun for me to see other Indigenous people from different parts of the Americas talk about Indigenous pride in their way. And so, and I mean, I've had a crush on Ricky Martin forever. Even when he was a young kid on TV, I was the younger kid looking at him on TV. So that really filled up my cup today. And and art matters kind of, and Rosemary set the tone already with that, with Palestine and the event that's coming up on Sunday, the importance of culture, the importance of the arts. And that's really what I think I took away from Ricky Martin and Bad Bunny. I honestly didn't even know who Bad Bunny was. Even saying Bad Bunny sounds funny. Anyway, I'm getting back. Let's get back to the book. But back to the big takeaways that I got from this book, without getting, like, I have a few dog ears. The biggest takeaways I got from this, I loved the fact that they talked about wise practices instead of best practices, because every nation is slightly different, and every geographic area is different. And I when I try to do anti-racism training with non-Indigenous people, I'll say, you know, you would never expect Vancouver to have the same best practices of Winnipeg, because they're vastly different cities with vastly different geographies, vastly different in the supply chain. Like all of the things. Like there's so many reasons, and I'm just so grateful that she put that to words about Indigenous nations. And again, prior to the TRC verbiage that was kind of coming out and giving us the language to use to talk about that importance. So I really enjoyed that, because I think, and not to put down this book, just academia, sometimes they really try to pan-indigenize, and they really try to force a narrative that's not necessarily true. Like the work that's being done at the U of C will be different than the U of A, which would be different than in Saskatchewan, which would be different in wherever geographic area. So I did really appreciate that. And I, like, this is so well researched. It has all the footnotes at the end of every single chapter. So I don't feel like I have to go searching really hard for any of the things that may have piqued my interest in this. And just that concept too, that, all of this is just highlights and showcases how academia regularly misses the mark by having a colonized lens versus the Indigenous lens. So that's why I love the title, Restoring Indigenous Leadership in a Good Way. I really appreciated all of that. And I appreciated the fact that she was so open about how the expectation of people who aren't given proper infrastructure of water, well, infrastructure in general, education, are expected to be these high functioning managing people under the constraints of the Indian Act. Like there was so much about this book that I took away, and I only got halfway through. Like I was only 140 pages in, and I took a lot from the best practices, especially in the critiques of best practices. And it gave me a lot to think about. And she actually talked about the National Center for First Nations Governance. A lot of these organizations that have been available already, the Harvard Project. I really enjoyed her critique of that, because it was funny. They were talking about Harvard trained people in the media, just with the ridiculousness of our geopolitical situation right now. So anyway, I really appreciated a lot of this, and just how matriarchal we should be thinking children first, as opposed to male centered. I'm really been unpacking male centered. I didn't realize how much male centered our world is, and we're seeing that. The U of A, I don't know if you all seen, they are getting rid of their DEI practices on their website and that. Now, I remember it was literally Danielle Smith saying you're not going to get your funding. End of discussion, right? Like the UCP government saying, we're cutting funding to all the universities that have this. So I don't even blame them. I just know that a lot of people online are blaming the U of A, and I mean that it's a geopolitical reason. It's you're going to shut down your university if you don't. And the fact that there's not enough people to push back on that shows how racist the society is, right? Anyway, I'm just going to pass on for now. And and hopefully we'll just kind of thread it out. And so if you want to go, Kat, Rosemary, Wendy, and then I just invite you all to take your mics off too. I don't know, unless you have a dog barking like me.
Um, a couple of the essays that really struck me, besides Cora's, of course, which was about women in leadership roles, was the chapter on deep listening and leadership. There was so much great information in there, and things that, I mean, humans could use, not just in their everyday, not just leaders.
Yeah.
Like respect underpins our relationships with each other and the land. Time is invested in relationships and building of trust. Our understanding of ways of knowing is broadened and deepened. Creativity is embedded into the way we learn, and a quality of care infuses our relationships and our work with each other. That just speaks a lot to me. And I love the fact that they talk so much in this book about art as well, and how valuable art is, not only in leadership, but of course in expressing culture and life.
Yeah.
And one more chapter that I really loved was Bob Casius's chapter, Leadership Success in Overcoming the Environmental Constraints to Indigenous and Entrepreneurial Activity in Canada. He had a lot of really great points in there too, which I mean, we've all read 21 Things You Need to Know About the Indian Act, but it's worth repeating, I think, that the Indian Act really, really messes up Indigenous lives, in the fact that they can't, oh wait, I'm going to find it here. They can't, oh, right. The invasive legislation asserts federal government authority over all the following areas in respect to reserve lands: improvements, compensation for loss of use, rights of temporary possession, transfer or cancellation of location tickets, remedy to trespass, approval of commercial transactions concerning reserve produce, infrastructure maintenance, and the taking of reserve lands by authorities. It's like, and of course they cannot get any mortgages, they cannot get loans because they have no assets. So people should know this about the Indian Act. And
I think Bob Joseph said it so well when he tried to tell people like he was looking for this loan, and his wife had to co-sign because he's just a native living under the Indian Act. Yeah.
That's brutal. Anyway, I will turn it over to other folks.
Thanks,
And
Kat.
those are two things I noted.
Oh, and I'm just going to give some context too to folks listening. Kat, don't you have a degree in the arts?
Technically, I have a diploma because I attended the Alberta College of Art and Design from 1983 to 87, and they gave out diplomas at that time. And now that it's the Alberta University of the Arts, I could have upgraded to a degree, but I think I was too late. I missed what I needed to do to get that. So I did my 4 years, and I should have a degree in photography.
Yeah.
I'm still a practicing artist and still taking pictures. So
you know, and I bring that up too because again, arts and culture is so relevant, and even I was not raised to appreciate the arts, and I wish I was, but I wasn't. And so I've been unpacking my anti-art biases and realizing that, you know, arts are what help us heal. And you actually had said it, you had quoted from the book that they actually help teach as well, which is correct, exactly. That part about meaningfully listening, you know, really hearing, it really resonated with me because whether it's, yeah, like obviously we're talking about Indigenous people, but it's also Black History Month. And so it is still shocking to me how many people online we'll talk over Indigenous people on Indigenous issues, or we'll talk over Black people on Black issues, and a lot of disability conversations, like able-bodied people speaking over folks with disabilities. Like, it's just, I see it all the time, and I don't understand how other people don't see it. Yeah, that's a pattern recognition. I wish I mean, I'm glad I have it, but it's infuriating. It's infuriating to see on a regular basis. So, anyway, yeah, I wanted to bring up the arts and the importance of it, and your perspective meaning has a deeper meaning because of your background in arts and your continual work as an artist that you continue to do throughout your life. So I think that's important, and it has a lot of meaning to me as well. So, yeah. Rosemary, did you want to chime in on the book of and go from there?
Sure, I'll do my best. Again, thank you to Kat for dictating the introduction to the book and the first essay and sending the audio files to me. Just different, I'll just talk in general. One thing that struck me when they were looking at best practices as outlined by different organizations, RCAP started out with Indigenous control of land and resources. Bang. Nobody else put that front and center. And we know from, several of the books we've read recently, that is such a critical issue, especially for communities in the north, right? In the north of Canada. So that was telling, I thought. Also, in terms of deep listening, I was interested in what they had to say about what's not said, or the spaces between what's said and what's not said. And it actually reminds me of a conversation in art school where we were asked to listen to an audio file of all of the pauses in Oppenheimer's conversation around the atomic bomb. And me, I'm sitting there and I'm going, well, like, it was just like, what? It's just silence. What? But then one of the students who actually was very interested in jazz, he was just brilliant. He goes, oh, but in music, it's sometimes those pauses that carry the meaning. And all those hesitations by Oppenheimer reflected the enormity of what, right, was about to descend on humanity and on Japan. So I felt that was really important. That really resonated for me, as it did with Kat. And I agree with Kat over and over. Right, we learn about the Indian Act, the harmful impact, and the very aggressive restrictions on Indigenous people. And years ago, I remember reading in more detail about the restrictions placed on Indigenous farmers as they were beginning to successfully compete, right, with white settler farmers in the agricultural market. So what do? You shut down access. The other, it was more of a question. I was just thinking a lot about everything being grounded in Indigenous culture, etc. And I was trying to think back to that book, Res Rules, about Chief Clarence Louis, right? Where here's a economically successful nation, and you've got businesses and others saying, oh, this is great, blah, blah, blah. But I don't remember having a sense of how strong the cultural values were, or maybe they weren't being explicit. Maybe the values were there, in terms of trying to break dependency and reassert, right, strength. But it wasn't. It just wasn't explicit, and I wondered if there were more. And actually, the more I think about it, like he talks towards the end about the need to take care of those community members who, in fact, are not able to take care of themselves, for one reason or another, and the importance of healing. So I feel like I should reread that book with a different lens, right? On what does it mean to have things grounded in cultural values. I don't know. Do you have a different take on that, or?
No, again, I really appreciate your take on it because even for me, like I think that if we were to reread some of the books, like I know I can read Clearing the Plains now without crying, right? So
Mm,
for talking about oppressive farming against Indigenous people, like that book it really hit me so hard, and I think that was our third book that we
mm,
did, and it was just so eye-opening as to because that I had never ever heard ever of those types of policies that were being imposed,
mm,
and it broke my heart to know
mm,
that you're working in a system of starvation and
mhm,
purposeful, and that there's nothing, man, that you can do. So I know I could at least read it. And Lost Harvest by Sarah Carter, I think, was like the fourth or fifth book. Like we had heavy, heavy books to start the book club. So they've always been seared into me. And actually, speaking of Sarah Carter, geez, she's actually featured in this as well. And I think this is one of her first debut books, or at least debuts in a collaborative situation like this. And she's one of my favorite people on the planet because of that book. The Importance of Monogamy changed my mind, like my life. It changed the way I looked at literally everything, and especially with Alberta separating. I imagine if I were to reread that book with that lens, it would really change the way I look at it too. I feel like every separatist, we should like force them to go to jail and read this book. And when they're done reading the book, they can leave after they've written an essay. I should not be a teacher. So yeah, I hope you feel like I added to what you were trying to say there, Rosemary, about rereading Clarence Louis's book because I know he came across as quite abrupt and conservative, but I've heard him speak many times, and
mm,
he's like he just cares about our people, and he cares about his people the most, obviously,
mhm,
and as he should. And just trying to work the system the best he can in order to help his people. And
right.
I think of like a comical depiction of that is it Rutherford Falls? There was this guy who owned the casino, and he wasn't actually a chief. He was just kind of in this leadership position to run this casino. And the woman Jana, who was like this, curator of the small amount of indigenous items that they had in order to showcase their culture. And she was like kept dreaming about bigger and bigger and bigger. Anyway, just really fun stuff to think about. And I think of Clarence Louis with that lens of
Mhm,
like, type A personality, just trying to get as much done as he can in his life for his people. So anyway, yeah. Wendy, did you want to chime in? Or
Sure,
Rosemary,
thanks.
if you
Yeah.
have more to add.
Yeah, did you have anything more there, Rosemary, right away? Sorry.
no, no, go ahead.
Okay. Um, well, I think the deep listening chapter is the one I read the most times. I kept coming back to that one for sure.
Yeah.
And they had that really I really appreciated the framework. So they had like a diagram and kind of put the ideas together and to emphasize like the role of a leader and talked about leaders like I'm looking at it right now. Leaders as collaborators, learners, facilitators, artists, storytellers, custodians, messengers. Like they translated it into so many different contexts for what a leader might be positioned as, and then connected that to the kind of deep listening that and I'm still trying to fully understand the framework. So I drew it for myself because I just really connected a lot with that one and just seeing it from so many different angles. And this was one of a few places I think where it was just so collaboratively developed that I couldn't even, because I usually, when I draw something or write something in my notes, I write a little note as to who said it or who wrote it. And I found that my notes for that framework, but for other places, like there was a lot that was like a group of people in the time that they came together. They were developing things. So it made some more challenges for me writing down attribution, but it also just made me realize how much actual collaborative work was behind many parts of this book. So that was really where I spent a lot of time. Michelle, you've already mentioned in a lot of good ways the wise practices versus best practices. Like that was really important for me. But then I think as I moved past the framework, I was getting into, I'm just kind of skimming through notes I have here to guide my thinking, because it was interesting. They talked about how many different cultures had practices of deep listening. And so they gave those examples from African cultures, from Chinese cultures, and we're kind of talking about that, kind of back to that again, that framing of our conversation today with culture as resistance, but also culture as being just really centered in grounding in all this work. And then I went down a rabbit hole because then, of course, in my own journey of like my own history, I was like, interesting. So all these different cultures value deep listening. And I'm like, what is the stars aligned in a way where Western thinking and the leaders in my own Eurocentric background, like it's deep listening. I just I sat with that for a little while. Just
No, I
like
did
how it's
too. This
not,
that
you
it
know?
was really reflective, wasn't it?
Yeah.
And Kat said the same thing.
Yeah, like it just kind of struck me. And I think as they just started pouring out all the examples, it was that reminder that like actually lots and lots of cultures that are in tune with their culture, that they ground their identity in their culture, that they have communities that pass down what they've learned over time in really good ways. This emerges. And then for me, that sounded then a very innately human thing to do. Um, and and so anyway, so that was an interesting bit of time, and then of course that set me up really well for this section that Cora Voyager had written, because she was talking a lot about women, and I really took a lot from that entire section, but really there were a few parts where she had done a lot of interviews with women chiefs and their perspectives. So different chiefs of different nations who were women and their perspectives and the interviewing and what she took away from it. But I actually sat down and wrote this whole quote out. So this was a quote that she had from her one of her interviews. And the first quote I wrote down, which was kind of leading into this part, is on page around 135-ish.
Hmm.
And people continuing to have gendered expectations of male and female leaders. So the quote I first got drawn in by was, "Women take on the responsibility for feeding our children." So it's just so core to what a society needs to do. And then that, for me, really summarized how it feels to be a woman. Like those things are just deep in what you're trying to accomplish. But then this quote was, "It's different when you are a man. You have a wife. She's there to cook and clean. A man comes home, puts down his briefcase, and his wife brings him some tea. He gets to relax. Even if he's unmarried, he generally has a mother or sisters who take care of him. That would be the day that my brother would come over and clean my house because I'd been at meetings all week." It was so it was so well said, and it's so nuanced. Like I think the other challenge with this is that uh these are hard conversations to have with women and with men that I care about in my life. Like I do find that there there's lots of good in almost every person I know. And so I'm not trying to disparage them or blame men or or glorify women. Like it's these realities of women and men in different societal situations. But I think this is a piece that is really hard for women and men to come to shared understanding about. Like I have had my own experience of trying to articulate this kind of flipped around scenario for families and people in my own family. Because for many, many years, I'm the primary person working outside the home, and my husband is the stay-at-home person, spending a lot of time with our family. And so I've tried to describe this before, how like women carry different things
Mm-hmm.
than men. And it's really hard to even talk about it because you also don't want to be in a position where you're undermining or you're disparaging what any person is contributing to their family.
Yeah.
But this like way she talked about it, I just felt really seen in the way she talks about these like they're built in to the way we interact with each other, these expectations that we have. And then I went back and reread it just to really take in more of what this particular interview was trying to capture. Because it really took me zoomed out really into the women men pieces, not only Indigenous women. So then I had to go back and reread that to think about it more that way. But I will say it really struck a chord with me. And I think those are the things that stood out the most for me, really, is just that deep understanding of that, and then how she used that to build in, um, that reminder that it took a lot of time, but eventually, women in their various different First Nations began to take on more of the leadership roles that they would have traditionally had, but that had been um, damaged through colonial practices. So that it was a very good portion of the book. I think that's the part I'll keep revisiting. But yeah, I would love to hear more from others. But those are the big pieces I took away.
Um, Over Christmas, I came across this content creator on TikTok, and she actually really like named all the emotional labor that women carry on a regular. I'm sure we all agree, birthdays, setting out cards, and but because it was Christmas time, she really focused on the amount of extra stuff that women do for Christmas, and she also talked about how um, women in the workplace end up with that extra expected unemotional labor to think of all the employees around them and their birthdays, get the cake for their birthdays, and put up the Christmas tree for the office and work. And it was interesting listening to her when I know like our job is so much more than that, and that's on top of your actual job, right? Whatever your job is in that workplace. It is just expected of all of the women in a workplace to take that torch, just as it's expected at home. And so I actually was happy to, I was happy about two things about that chapter about women leadership, that she really emphasized like these are Indian Act elected chiefs, right? Like she didn't even go down the road of traditional governance and women's place in traditional governance. She just focused on the Indian Act and what that job is like for women. And so that made me really happy because um, I think I think there's a lot of non-natives who tokenize us as Indigenous women in different ways. I just finished reading the TRC and the MMIW reports on media, and both of them talked about the stereotypes, the tropes, basically, of Indigenous people, and especially the women being either the queen, the princess, the Indian princess, or a squaw. That's it. And it's like we are so much more than that. And so when reading her take on women's Indigenous leadership, I really appreciated that she took it to that next level because like in the three tropes that they said in the national inquiry, like that wasn't even on the radar, was the concept of us being in leadership positions, despite the fact that was our traditional role. And now we can be Indian Act chiefs. And she talks about when that change had happened in the book, which I appreciated. So, yeah, just really grateful to share this conversation with you all. And I can just pause it for a moment here. Yeah, I just want to welcome Deb to our conversation as well. I don't mind people coming in late. Don't worry about that. So grateful that you came at all. And yeah, if you can unmute, you're more than welcome to chime in. I can ask to unmute, and that might give you a prompt.
Thank you. Yeah, I'm on my phone because, yeah, just it's me. Um, uh, yes, thank you for letting me. I'm trying to learn how to crochet, and I got lost in that, and all of a sudden it was like, oh, not again. So I thought I'm coming late. So sorry,
That's
everyone.
okay. That's okay. Did you get a chance to read this book at all?
I didn't. I did track it down and I read what the book is about, and then I found a synopsis of it from the Banff
Center.
of the Arts. Yeah.
Yeah.
I did find an ebook of it, but I wasn't sure that it was actually a legal one, even though I would pay to get it. So I thought I'll just get a hard copy.
You know, Deb, just by chance, Rosemary had talked to Cora about some extra hard copies that she had. So I don't know if you heard, I think you would have missed it, but there's an event coming up that's in my area, Forest Lawn, and she's going to be there to talk for a dinner. It's like a bannock and stew and a talk with her. So, that might be an opportunity for you to go meet her. And I bet you she would give you a copy if you arrange that in advance with her.
Sure. So that's Cora
Voyager. She's
Oh,
at the U of C.
yeah.
But she's going down to the Alex Food Center for a talk. So
I can track that down. And when you say there's the Forest Lawn in Calgary, right? Or
Yep.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
I didn't know one in
Yeah, there's something called the Alex Food Center,
Yeah.
and Rosemary is a part of an organization of like women ending poverty together. And so they just put out their poster for this event that's happening in March. And so if you connected with Cora beforehand and said,
Oh,
"Hey, could I get a copy of that book?"
sure.
She'd probably give that to you because she had offered it to Rosemary. So
Well, you might have to pay for it. She didn't offer it to me for free. I'm just saying.
okay.
Yeah.
Sorry. I got
But
mine
yeah.
at Fairs Fair for
Okay.
$12.50.
That's good.
Oh man, I haven't been to Ferris Fair in ages. I didn't even think of looking at a second.
I always go to Fairs Fair first. I'm a nerd.
I haven't been. Well, I'm in Wee Granham, which is not far from Calgary, but
Yeah.
And you went to the one in Inglewood or the one on? Well,
If you call them in advance, they'll
People-
tell you where their copy is, and they can probably get the copy to the location you'd prefer. They're
Oh.
really great at that.
Yes.
So,
Yeah.
yeah.
Okay.
And in worst case scenario, I'll give you my copy, and then and at least it's out there and it still has the Fairs Fair logo on there. And why that matters is that if you give it back to Fairs Fair and you get the credit, they give you half of the credit that's on that tag. So if it's $12.50, they'd give you like, $6, $6.25 for that book.
Then you go get another book.
Yep.
Yeah.
And I could be wrong. Maybe Cora would give it to you. I just don't know.
Oh, yeah,
But
but
don't
that,
want you
it
to
would,
have false expectations. Yeah.
I appreciate you clarifying, Rosemary, but even talking to her about it, it just worked out really amazing that you're doing this event while we're doing this book. So,
yeah. That's
all
all.
right.
Okay.
And Deb, I noticed that you did chime in when we were talking about the lost harvests and clearing the plains. So obviously you're aware of those books too.
Yeah, and it's what colonialism does. And not just, but yeah, because I've been looking a bit into my Irish roots as well, and it just goes directly back to the potato famine.
Yeah.
And the rise of the cottage industry of the crocheting. I'm not at that level yet, let me tell you, for the Irish crocheting. But it just is, it's a systematic, crushing of a culture and starvation of a people to Yeah.
Yeah, no kidding. Well,
Yeah.
okay, I did
Okay.
dog ear a bunch of the book that I did read.
Mhm.
We did talk a lot about all right, well, let's oh, the critique of best practices concept. I really loved this section. Um, and I loved all the resources that they gave as well. I'm sorry, my camera is probably not going to look real nice, but I don't care. I dog ear for a reason.
It's nothing but a dog-eared book. And that's from a librarian. Yeah.
I know I do it. I'm gonna just read this one part out loud because I really appreciated it. So this is the part actually when we're discussing so Christopher Wetzel's area and this Harvard project was actually a really great example of issues with academia's lens on Indigenous issues. So I just want to read this. The Harvard Project on American Indian Economic Development has sought to expand beyond the U.S. and work with First Nations in Canada and Aboriginal peoples in Australia. Some academics in these countries critique the Harvard Project model for posting modes of development that in inadequate are inadequate and they're reflecting the needs and concerns of Indigenous communities. I swear my brain quit working after COVID. Like I have to relearn how to pronounce words. It's crazy. Seeing the tremendous number of groups across sectors that purport to offer culturally relevant knowledge and training, we should ask what this means, how it works, and what visions of sovereignty are reflected in the practice of training. Beyond debating whether Indigenous sovereignty is best framed in terms of independence versus interdependence, I acknowledge the importance of recognizing the diversity and specificity of Indigenous concepts of sovereignty. And so I really appreciated that. It's really a critique on Harvard as an American academic institution, and the need to really realize like Indigenous sovereignty is not going to be framed well in a construct of American academic settings. And it's certainly not going, what works in one area in America is not going to work everywhere else. But earlier we were talking about Puerto Rico, and it's like, well, America needs to still understand and decolonize and in general. Um, Actually, the next part that I had dog-eared was exactly that graft that you were talking about, Wendy, this whole area of deep listening and leadership model. Um, I did really like, I just kept reflecting on it. And when it said leaders as collaborators, leaders as learners, leaders as facilitators, artists, storytellers, deep listening to country if you're a custodian, deep listening to the future if you're a messenger, deep listening to wisdom as a storyteller. So I was really reflecting on all of this because, what is my job as a native Calgarian podcaster? So I kept kind of reflecting on all of these things and the gravity to them. And maybe it was the influence of reading this book, which is why I went back to the TRC calls to action for media, because I just felt like, this is really talking about Indigenous issues at a deeper, more meaningful level. And I feel like when I turn on my social media and I see, hot takes by some rando guy that we've never heard before, and this is getting so many retweets and so many reshares, and I'm like, but this is nothing of substance, right? Like I like sharing this redneck named Henry Sir. He's a comedian, but that's his job is to make me laugh. Like his job is to make me laugh, and he makes fun of Alberta politics with humor, right? That I'll reshare for a white man. But there's a lot of white male, like they're not journalists, they're not academics, they're not, constitutional lawyers. They're not, and so I don't always understand why it is we just pick some random guy and amplify this voice over people who have meaningful things to say about what's happening with separation. Like, yeah, I'm going to share Henry Sir because it's so absurd, but as much as I may not agree with Dwayne Bratt on a million other topics, this is one we may have commonality on. This would be one I would share when talking about constitutional issues. Like I don't always understand why social media and the clicks. People will share things for clicks. But when you're talking about like sexual trauma, child trauma, what are we doing here? Anyway, so I just really appreciated that this part about leaders as deep listening to that there was so much depth to it as opposed to the I don't know, garbage you just kind of see in media. Even in media right now, like they're not really, I think, critical of the separation movement. And I have people from across the country ask me, like, is this real? Like, what is happening? And I think it's partly because our media is not really giving it like proper critique. Instead, they're giving the platform to these ridiculous notions and ideas and this Dallas Brody, giving her platform instead of saying like, we wouldn't let Nazis talk about the good parts of Nazis, but we do that here all the time when it comes to this conversation about, because to me, separation is deeply embedded with the concept that that's anti-Indigenous racism, to deny treaty and to deny the Indigenous inherent rights to this land. Like to me, it's like so basic, and I don't feel like media's getting that conversation at all. And on social media, people misuse Indigenous people to be like, well, the natives will save us. Thank God for the natives. And it's like, but you guys are benefiting at our oppression and you're not acknowledging that. So I'm just getting anxiety. Like I'm like 10 out of 10 on anxiety going on social media or reading media. So this I found really healing as an alternative to understanding why it is I'm having such a visceral, disgusting reaction to everything I'm seeing that's mainstream right now, whether it's Epstein files or the Nathan Chasing Horse trial or, me, Indian residential school denialism, treaty denialism. This is really upsetting me. And I feel like there's not a proper response to that because non-natives are still so ignorant on Indigenous issues and ignorant of treaty and ignorant of the oppression that they don't understand how to properly discuss it. So I just found that this helped me realize I'm on my right path, regardless of, reshares and retweets and all those things, right? Like that stuff doesn't matter. It just doesn't. This matters. And one day, if people do listen to this podcast or listen to a previous one, they'll understand why I wasn't using Epstein files as a clickbait. That's insane to me. And why it was I blocked all the progressives in Canada who don't see themselves as the perpetrators of ICE in Canada, standing with the RCMP and the police on regularly when it comes to murdering me and my people, right? I don't know. I really felt like this helped grounded me in what I'm doing, that I'm on the right path. So anyway, I don't think people deep listen to me as much as I wish they would, but it's that bigger picture that it's not about me. It's the message of treaty. It's the message of reconciliation. It's the message of denialism, how that's anti-Indigenous racism. That I hope one day it will be heard. So, oh, I dog-eared this one area from page 100 because it talked about facilitating mutual exchange. Because I remember like years ago, a lot of people tried to talk about how there should be like reciprocal understanding and such. But I just want to read this one part to you. So at this point in time, this is Laura Burley's work, and they were going past deep learning here or deep listening.
So the five key aspects to our research model that may be helpful for others is facilitating mutual exchange. This is achieved by framing the relationship between the supervisor and the candidate as a collaboration. You must determine what you have to share as the foundational structure of the doctoral work. The candidate and the supervisor must invite each other into their cultural and creative worlds to share songs, stories, images, poetry that are related to the conversation. I loved this part because it goes on. She goes into five others, and it really talked about how there was a teamwork. And I think one of the things I've been unpacking with my autism is understanding that I see people as equal, even though they don't see me in that way. And before I just thought it's because I was a Native woman, but I actually think it has a lot more to do with my autism, that I don't see hierarchy the way colonial structures frame hierarchy. And so what I found important about this was the concept to introduce to, folks who are going to take on a candidate in academia, that they start seeing their students in a more respectful way. And literally, I was just sharing on TikTok an Asian woman. The Asian community is calling out this Asian academic for being abusive, basically. And I was like, he needs to read this part of this book because this really talks about, being a PhD and being a candidate and working collaboratively. And I mean, if there's one thing that has turned me off in going into academia, it's that the toxicity of it. And I mean, obviously, if the U of A has to cut their DEI, like this is not something that's going to be in my lifetime, and maybe for the next kids, I don't know. But just that bigger picture is at least Cora was publishing something to try to introduce the concept to academia of equality, to try to introduce the concept that you can't treat your students, your PhD students, like shit. And not just that, but imagine if you actually got to learn more. Like if I was a PhD and I took on a Puerto Rican student and I got to hear about life through their lens, there is mutual exchange there and respect and understanding. And I don't think I'd fit in an academic setting because it is a very hoity-toity, terrible way to treat people. I don't know how to say it. It's just abusive, toxic. I don't know. It doesn't have to be that way. And I'll say, Rosemary's husband, Don, like he tried really hard to be. Yeah, here's a scholar on apartheid and South Africa, and he worked really hard to not be toxic, to work with his students, right? So I'm not saying all professors by any stretch, but I just thought this was such a great way to lean this out, and it was a moment I was missing Dawn, actually, for that reason. I thought, I wonder what Dawn would have thought of this part. So, yeah. Anyway, I guess I should keep talking. What's another part I dog-eared? Oh, this was kind of where you were talking, Wendy, about your deep dive of really going through all of this and, thinking about African Chinese cultures and deep listening circles. Like this was something that I was reflecting on as well, and just kind of reading through what other people were saying. Um, I just found that really wonderful. And then to see Blackfoot listed here in like here we're talking about Tao and like from uh the Indian areas and such. Like we had all of these different folks bringing in all these different pieces, and then we have Audrey Breaker and describing the Cree concept of living in harmony, while we had the Blackfoot concept of dwelling in wisdom. So Bob Breaker, Andrea Breaker, and the elder that they kept talking about throughout here, there was so much inclusion of Blackfoot, and I thought that was so wonderful to see in this book as well. Um, Basically, just it was almost it was almost like poetry in a lot of ways, just reading through this part as well.
Yeah, and it looks like the Banff Center was a big part of why this book was put together, but they also had done outreach circles, which I thought was really great, especially for those times. I had heard bad things of that time era, how harmful it was to Indigenous people. But it's like this was a really beautiful piece that came out of some of that ugly, that's for sure. Brian Callahoo, again, Program Director for Indigenous Leadership and Management at the Banff Center, um, basically was the facilitator for bringing this all together. And so it was nice to see. And then, yeah, and then this chapter 4, I can just read this whole part to you if you want to, but it's just wonderful having her like uh, 10 years ago, we weren't talking about business ownership by Indigenous women. We weren't talking about entrepreneurial concepts. Even in here talking about formal education, like I I've always felt like we have so many women who have masters and doctorates who can't find jobs, who live in poverty, who aren't being paid like what they deserve by any stretch. But they're expected to have a master's degree in order to get, $50,000 a year under this grant that might be taken away next year. That's such a typical way that I have seen so many people in my life live, and I hate it. I don't think it's right. Um, anyway, let me just read the conclusion part of this because I thought it was really powerful. The Indigenous world is transforming with changes occurring in the educational, economic, and political fronts. The once marginalized women have moved front and center. They are regaining their traditional place in the public sphere in politics and business with the help of formal and informal knowledge. They are assuming positions of authority in Indigenous and mainstream societies. This newly regained authority goes against the colonial ideas that marginalized them as Indigenous people and as women. These same ideals meant that they were expected to be silent, remain to be home, and concerned only with the family and their spouse, deferring all decision making to men. Ironically, the stereotyping of women's roles, as found in a colonial mindset, is serving as one rationale for women to be elected as leaders and start their own businesses. Both groups of women are taking up traditional female roles of caregiving within community. As elected chiefs, they are able to help build healthy communities through an emphasis on social programming. The ethos of the community is more than just bricks and mortar. It lies in the sense of community and security in relationships. As business owners, the women are in the study are able to demonstrate their abilities, provide needed goods and services, exert their independence, and create employment opportunities for themselves and others. The first female, the first, first, na- the First Nations female chiefs, the First Nations female chiefs were able to negotiate their way through a unique situation within community. The women had a sense of duty to family and community, since many of the community's men left in search of work, and the women are left to tend to day-to-day life and take care of children. This gave them an opportunity to stay close to their support networks and families. They were able to draw support from their contacts. Their large extended families served as emotional and political support for them. They relied heavily on their families for advice, since most came from political families where there was a wealth of experience in dealing with complex issues. Furthermore, they coped with the demands of their jobs and surrounded themselves with supportive friends and family and like-minded politicians. Whether running a community or managing a business, these women put their actions or their values into actions. Sometimes there was a conflict between the centrality of a family in the Indigenous community and the demands of work. This situation was softened by the fact that there was little delineation between work and home life. They would rely on family members with political or business experience for advice and guidance on their decision making. The expectations of First Nations community leader are changing. Currently, there is an emphasis on community healing, as a means of counteracting the ravages of the residential school system, which has had a lasting impact on the community, especially in the forms of social pathologies. There is a good fit within the organizational and household skills traditionally used by women to meet the needs of family. The women in the study were accustomed to managing a large family, multitasking, and compromising to work towards the best outcome. It goes on a little bit more, but I just found that really empowering. And it's nice to see that being written after reading the National Inquiry. I'm not going to lie. Um, I think I have a friend of mine, and she does, and her business is called Eagle Medicine Coaching, and she works really hard at empowerment for Indigenous women who are already killing it. Like that's the whole thing. Like when I look at Indigenous women who are, already leaders, who are already, you know, leaders in their area, whether it's crafting, whether it's business. Like I see crafting as business. A lot of them use it as business, and so they're promoting their wares. They're promoting. They're going to different events, and they're promoting those events as well. They're promoting their online businesses that they've created in order to, continue to be a single mom. So I see the hustle. I see the hustle of a single mom all the time on my Facebook with multiple friends of mine. And so, I wish all women, Indigenous women, seen themselves as the leaders they are, even though they're just surviving, right? They're doing the hustle. So anyway, that's as far as I got in the book. I think I really wanted to read. Probably when I get off of here, I will. But there was one specifically one I wanted to read, and it was towards the end. And maybe some of you had gotten a chance to read it. It was by Michelle Evans. It's called Exploring Australian Indigenous Artistic Leadership. And the reason why I wanted to read that one is more because I'm trying to see the podcast I do as that. It is a form of art. I just didn't understand it as that. So anyway, trying to be better at understanding that. And then, of course, making it more sustainable. Of course, then it's a small business and I have to start thinking in a business mind as well. So but I don't want to compromise my values, right? Like I don't want to have Imperial Oil give me $10,000 and every podcast I have to go, and thanks to Imperial Oil for us showcasing. Like I don't want to do that. That's the opposite of what I want to do. So, anyway, I'm getting off story here, but yeah, is there anything else you guys wanted to add to this book?
Not to this book, but I also wanted to say I'm grateful that you've done 2 podcasts now reading the TRC and the National Inquiry. I think that's super important to hear those words again. Maybe for folks who've never heard them before, they need to hear them, and media needs to hear them. And why aren't they following them again and again and again? There's so much valuable information that you put out, and I am always grateful for. So thank you. I see you as an artist and am grateful that you share yourself. Thanks.
Thank you. Thanks, heart. No, I appreciate that. Yeah, I want to start talking about, these major topics that I've kind of talked about, but through the lens of that, because, people say they're trauma informed, but then I see what they're posting, and they're not trauma informed at all. That bigger picture too is that the fact that media talks about reconciliation but doesn't see this conversation about separation as absolutely imperialism, colonialism, anti-Indigenous racism, like it's shocking to me. And so I wanted to get there, but I also, I just didn't have the spoons. Like reading some of the stories of the Epstein files is horrific. Like I don't think anyone should be exposed to a lot of those things, unfortunately, unless they're literally in court. And you may be hearing a little bit of it on the news. It's as horrific as Cindy Gladio's case that ironically nobody in the non-native community heard about. Like it was just shocking to me what we will exploit and what we won't. And now in today's day and age of like clicks, you know, I'm always shocked at what people will put out there and not have context to. So,
Yeah, it's really unfortunate that treaty is not at the forefront of the separation discussion. It's just, it's just, I know why. I know why, because we're still a colonialist state and white supremacist, and we choose to willfully ignore it until it serves our purposes, right? Like you said, we'll get the natives in to save us, and we'll just use them because they have treaty. It really sucks, and
yeah.
yeah. Anyway, sorry, I'm babbling.
Don't be. No, that's what I want.
I liked hearing, Michelle, that you are thinking from that art lens about the work that you're doing, though. Like, I think when you were talking about that at the beginning, I was thinking about how um, there are subtleties, nuances, things that can be expressed through art that you don't get in other ways. So I'm glad that you're embracing that way of thinking about the work that you're doing, because it is richer than what is just, a clickbait item, or even a book. Like a book, you can tell when we're reading books like this, they talk about the powerful experiences they had, but we're not having that powerful experience by reading this book. You're just like knowing there's so much richness to what they experienced. There's no way of describing it in a book in the same way. And so you've got to experience it. And you're already exploring multiple modes of sharing information, of learning information. Like that is already quite artistic. So I'm glad that you're going in that direction. Yeah.
Yeah.
You're storytelling.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's what you're doing.
And what is the story? Like restorying a conversation, right? So like when we get to talking about an Epstein or Nathan chasing horse or separation, like restorying it, because what I'm seeing in the media, what I'm seeing in social media, it's like, man, you guys are missing like the mark. I don't understand it. So anyway, yeah. Any other thoughts or anything? And if not, that's okay. I actually don't remember what our next book is. I better look it up. Kat, what is your next book for Settlers Book Club? Why don't you tell us about that while I look this up?
I will indeed. Your next book, by the way, is David A. Robertson. All
Oh,
the
I
Little
can't wait for this
Monsters.
book.
Me
Oh, I've
either.
been dying to read this book.
And my next book is A Parable of the Sower by Octavia E. Butler. I've been wanting to read her for a long time as well. And for Black History Month, I decided to go with it, and I'm really excited about it.
That's
So
amazing.
if anybody, Deb, if you want to join, just go to settlersbookclub.com. There's info on how to join. Anybody who's listening to this podcast as well, settlersbookclub.com. It is a commitment to be part of 2 book clubs. So I'm grateful to Rosemary, who's also in my book club as well. And I know Michelle has a million other things to do. So I respect the fact that she even promotes my book club. Thank you.
No, I honestly, I tell people, I don't care if you don't like me. That's fine. Don't like me. But there are a lot of other podcasts and book clubs to be a part of, right? Like there's a lot of things that people can do. And you know how I hate buying from mainstream stores. But I was in Walmart and I seen this book on sale on clearance and I don't have it. I don't own it. And it's called 52 Ways to Reconcile by David
Oh, by David.
Robertson.
Oh,
Yeah.
yes.
Yeah,
Mhm.
no, and right on the back, it's like 52 things right there. I'm like, how are people still asking me this ridiculous question? How can I get started when it's like you have books like this? Like they exist,
I
you
think
know?
am I not, isn't that on my list? I can't remember either.
Well, I bought it and it's so simple to read and so easy to read. And
Yeah.
I'm like Bob Joseph, like he wrote it so simple for everybody to understand. Both of his books that I have. I think I have another one of his books, but I don't remember where I put it, and I don't remember if I read it. So that's embarrassing, but it's true. So anyway, he's a really great writer.
Mhm.
David Robertson's such a great writer too. And I've actually never done one of his books. And, so that's embarrassing because he's has a long history of writing great books that I've never read. And so this one about anxiety and monsters, I'm like, I'm all in. I'm all in. I bought the book wanting to read it as soon as I could, and I never made time, and I never made time, and I'm still not making time. So this month is coming up is going to be a good one. I hope, I hope, and I hope
What's
that
the
you
title?
have access to it, Rosemary.
What's the title, Michelle?
Uh,
All the Little Monsters.
Oh,
Thanks, Kat.
How I Learned to Live with Anxiety by David A. Robertson. I think it might be accessible to you, Rosemary.
okay, good. And Octavia Butler's book is a parable of the
Sower, Sower.
sower. Okay, great.
Yes.
Thank you.
You're welcome, which is accessible because I checked.
Thank you.
Rockstar. That's
I
good.
just wanted to add, I'm super excited about this book too, and I'm not yet familiar with his writing. So when I was getting this one prepped to order for myself, I ended up getting from the library the first in his series for like it's for children and young adults. It's called Barren Grounds. It's the first of the
Yeah.
novels that he's written for kids, but I'm reading it to my daughter at bedtime, and like
Oh,
she's a already loves being read to, like all kinds of books. And I mean, she had the patience to live through a few months ago I read her The Hobbit. So like she's ready for like good writing.
I
and you know,
love that you read that to her because my dad read The Hobbit to me when I was young, and that's why I feel like I'm a nerd, but it's also because he's autistic and ADHD, and I'm autistic and ADHD, and I didn't know. Anyway, so I loved that book, and I loved when my dad
Yeah.
would read it to me.
and what's so cool about David A. Robertson's books, the Massagoa uh, sagas, the Baron Grey,
Yes.
the first, is if you're familiar with The Hobbit and The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe, so you see all the tropes, I guess you would call them,
Yeah.
of fantasy world, but it's through the lens of the Cree culture.
Yeah.
Just and probably one of my best. Well, I've had many best moments as a school librarian. There was a student who had transferred into our school, and I had I had his book out because I talked to one of the teachers, and I said, this will make a really good, I don't know, I can buy you a set and you can use it in the classroom. Anyway, and she is Cree, the student, and when she saw that cover, she knew exactly who the characters were on the front.
Mm,
And it's like, oh, see, I still get goosebumps. And again, that's why representation is so important. Like that immediate connection she had. So she was pretty excited to read the book for that reason, but because she recognized the creatures that are on the front.
mhm.
Yeah. Anyway.
And
Love
we're
that.
not all the way through the first one. We have the
Yeah.
first three from the library right now,
Yeah.
but yeah, his writing is
Is
excellent. So I'm
right.
just really looking
Yeah.
forward to
Him
this.
writing
He
is
is a beautiful human being too. Kat and I
Yeah.
yeah.
met him,
Is
and
so
he's just a humble, sweet man. And
yeah.
so, like, if I can buy all of his books and give him all the monies, I will.
Yeah. And he's been doing this for a long, long time. I've been reading his books since like he's got some great graphic novels about residential schools. He has one that he wrote. And then I'll stop. But a picture book that he wrote when we were alone, and it is about this little girl asking her grandma about, like, she's wears bright colors, and how's her hair always brightly done in her bright ribbon skirts, and she asks her why it's so important, and grandma explains. I hope I'm doing the book justice. This is just a picture book, that when they were in residential school, they weren't allowed to do any of that. All the color was taken from the world. Their hair was cut. And then she said, but when we were alone, and she talks about her and her little sister, they would be out in the field and they would look at the flowers and they would braid. Just, such a beautiful book.
Yeah, I'm not going to scold a librarian talking about a wonderful book in a book club. That's like the opposite of everything I believe in. I feel like we're the revolutionaries here, reading books that men hate.
Yeah. The books. That could be a book club.
Right. We're renaming. Just kidding. Well, I love that. And I want to hear all about the books as you guys go through it and how your kids are reacting to it. I love the representation. Oh, speaking of which, you probably didn't see this because I can only post it on social media. There's a social media called Substack, and a lot of I'm finding the journalists are writing on there. So I did my first real journalism with covering a new display that opened up at the airport, and it's sports related. It's 70 years of sports, and so the Hall of Fame, out of all people, contacted me. So I went, and Sharon Ann Firth, she and her sister were Olympians for Canada. They were, I want to say, cross-country skiers. They were skiing in some form. Anyway, just a dynamic woman. And one of the books that we're going to be doing in our book club, which really focuses on Indian residential schools up north, she came for that launch because she knows the family, and her and her sister are actually in the book because I flipped to the back and I seen that they're credited in there. So anyway, this was the second time I got to meet her. She's just a dynamic human being, just a beautiful human being. And Wilton Littlechild was there too. And so I was telling them about, first of all, I asked everybody if they'd seen Heated Rivalry. None of them had, which kind of felt a little funny asking Indian residential school survivors because, I don't know if we've gotten to a point that we can really unpack that type of, anyway, moving on. What I was telling Wilton, especially, and Peter Daniels, he's a Dene elder and coach for Inuit games and for Dene games. Like he's the historian for all of it, and he's here in Calgary. And anyway, I was telling them that the young Indigenous hockey players, when they celebrate and they go by the crowd, they take their hockey glove and their stick like they're smudging the crowd. So they call it the smudge celly. And both Wilton and Peter were like, "Oh my God, I love that." So then I did a TikTok giving a shout out to Smudge the Blades because he's the one who started doing that. And all the kids are now doing it that are Indigenous and playing hockey. Right. So yeah, just fun representation matters moments. Yeah. Actually, I'll send you that one right now. Rosemary, the link to the Substack, and then that way you can read and see the pictures from there.
Thank you.
Yeah.
You just joined Substack, right? Because I just noticed that today when I was lurking on your link tree.
Yeah, no, I joined it but I wasn't utilizing it to its capability, right? So I would just like reshare, I don't know, somebody else's work basically. And I was like, hey, this is actually an authentic piece. And I submitted it to a Calgarian book that's being published. Yeah, because they asked me to submit something about Calgary, and I was going to do Beaufort Towers. But after I wrote this, I was like, oh, I'll just send them this. So we'll see if they like it and if they want to publish that one. So that'll be my first published work. If they okay it, we'll see.
Let us know so we can buy the book.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, it's the concept is they asked a bunch of Calgarians to write something, right? Something about our history that you don't read in I don't know, Aretha's books or something, but and I was like, I still need to sit down and write out something about Beaufort Towers anyway, because I'd want to submit it. I think if I just give them three things, they might do it. But even if they don't, then at least I have kind of put down my thoughts on paper.
You still have 3 things to send elsewhere.
Yeah, exactly.
Besides,
So, yeah. I know this book club kind of went all over the place. I hope everybody liked it, though. And I hope that everybody goes to see the Settler Book Club, goes to this event in March, and the Palestinian event that's happening on Sunday at the Unitarian Church or the United Church. I can't remember what she said.
Unitarian.
Unitarian. Okay, good. So the Unitarian Church, and that's like arts and cultures of Palestinians that I would want to see, that's for sure. So, okay, folks, thanks for joining me. And thanks for reading. And thanks for sharing your thoughts on books.
Thank you
on
very much.
That too. Thank you, Michelle.
Thanks, everyone. And Michelle, always.
Bye.
Always.
Thank you, guys.
Keep
I'm so
well.
grateful.
Book
All
club.
right. Take care, folks.